Joining us, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs and MS Now political analyst Rick Stengel, New York Times opinion columnist David French, and U.S. national editor for the Financial Times, Ed Luce. David, you asked the question. I'll let you answer it.
Katie, we're in the middle of something that we might call the great forgetting, that we have bad idea after bad idea from the past resurfacing, whether it is tariffs, the Gilded Age level of corruption, the kind of authoritarianism that is casting eyes away from democracy, whether it's land wars in Europe, wars raging continually in the Middle East. It's as if, and then hovering it over this all is this just extraordinary growth that we have seen in this country of anti-Semitism. It's like we're walking through the museum of wretched ideas. And I think one of the things that's happened is we've had a lot of frustrations with liberal democracy of late. Our democracy has not worked for a lot of people. And so they've forgotten this Churchill saying that democracy is the worst system in the world except for every other system. And so a lot of people are casting their eyes towards discredited ideas and towards discredited movements out of frustration at this sort of messiness of democracy. And so we have an obligation. We got to fix our democracy. We'll never make it perfect, but fix it enough to where people's eyes aren't turning towards that discredited past.
You know, we have been in a similar situation before. 60s and 70s, people were very disillusioned with our system, did not believe in it any longer. The Vietnam War, Watergate brought down confidence in American institutions and obviously Washington and the government. But there was also polling that showed that a lot of young people, especially kids on college campuses, believe that political violence justified the ends. The means were a justification for political change. We're seeing something similar today, David. We were able to get out of it back then. Can we get out of it today?
Yeah, I don't know if we could get out of it today if we went through the same level of violence we went through back then. Back then, there were periods of time in American history where you were having more than one domestic terror bombing a day. You had violence in cities that makes the violence we saw in 2020 look light by comparison. And I do wonder in this hyper-polarized social media age, if we could even survive that level of strain on the system that we saw in the late 1960s and the early 1970s. That's why it is so incumbent upon us to advocate for a return to character, a return to decency before we slide any further, because we cannot be guaranteed that we can slide further and snap back. We've done it before in history, but that's not a promise that we can do it again.
All right, so we have some very interesting breaking news about the levers of democracy pushing back against a president who wants to do whatever he pleases, even when it's outright wrong. Donald Trump plans to drop the weaponization fund. This is being reported by Axios, according to two senior administration officials. One of them said it's dead for now. All right. It's not talking about the IRS portion of it, by the way, just the anti-weaponization fund. I mean, Ed, this does feel like a victory for Republicans in Congress who heard about this, gave Todd Blanche an earful, and clearly tried to give the president an earful as well. We know that Speaker Mike Johnson went to the White House today.
Yeah, I mean, Todd Blanche got, I think, shouted at by half the caucus. About 25 stood up one by one when he went up last week to talk about this fund. And he just got shouting back at him, basically. I think it's pretty clear from the optics of this extraordinary and I think unique in American history piece of self-dealing and sort of unregulated slush fund that it's manifestly intended to be by Trump, that the Democrats were going to force Republicans to vote for it. They were going to link it to the reconciliation that is yet to be passed, in which there's like $70 billion or so for immigration enforcement that the Republicans desperately need. And Trump has made Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader's job, a lot easier, not just by the sort of brazenness of this fund. There's no real sort of pretense there. The fact that he and his family have been self-awarded eternal freedom from IRS audits forever, I think were the words Todd Blanche used, but also by the fact that Trump keeps attacking Republican allies. John Cornyn of Texas is the most recent. Tom Tillis is another. And of course, Cassidy of Louisiana. There are now, and then if you include Susan Collins, who wants to win re-election in November, there are probably now enough Republicans to go with Chuck Schumer, and I'm sure others like Mitch McConnell, people who are not facing re-election, who can suddenly locate their spine. And Trump is really making it easy for them. So the Axios report sounds true. I mean, it's yet to be confirmed, but I think it's utterly unsurprising.
I mean, the senators were going to introduce amendments in this vote-a-rama for the immigration package done through reconciliation, which means Democrats get to come in and say, I want this change, I want that change. Jackie Rosen wanted to bring up, I forgot the exact phrasing of it, but she was going to try to force Republicans to vote on using that money for, I think, to combat childhood poverty, instead of giving it to the January 6 writers if they apply and they get approved. Just having them have to choose between childhood poverty and people who stormed the Capitol, in theory, that would have been a very difficult thing for Republicans to try to navigate, don't you think?
Yes. And to get back to where we started, I think it is the system working.
Yeah.
It's the legislature responding to something that is beyond the pale. It's Republicans getting in touch with their DNA as a party, small government party.
Isn't it amazing that this is the issue that they finally really push back on?
Well, I think that's fine. I mean, we've all been waiting for something to happen, and there's been trickles, and certainly people like John Cornyn and people who have lost have pushed back slightly. But this is the kind of thing of, you know, in David's very good column, where he talks about institutions in society failing or not working.
Yeah.
This is an institutional process that is actually working. And we've seen the courts stand up. We have seen some Republicans who have shown some kind of a spine. I mean, it doesn't happen immediately. So, I mean, as the kind of House optimist, I'm encouraged by it.
You know, I've been feeling a little bit more optimistic lately as well. I know we're all very worried about democracy, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried about democracy, but I do think we are witnessing, David, the institutions holding, the courts holding. Now we're seeing the legislature hold, if this reporting is true. We've also seen people, for as sour as they are on our institutions, on our government, on our politicians, they're voting in record numbers, record turnout at special elections. There was record, Donald Trump won, but there was record turnout in the last presidential election in 2024.
Well, you know, look, what we're seeing right now are the wages of the combination of an enormous amount of hubris with a 35% approval rating. So this fund, $1.776 billion, was an act of remarkable hubris. It was just saying, I don't care about the law. I don't care about the separation of powers. I'm going to do what I want. That would be controversial under any circumstances. It's doubly controversial when it's undertaken by a deeply unpopular president. It's triply controversial when he's trying to coax a Congress that he's been bullying. And I think this is one thing that people are perhaps underestimating, is that Trump has been bullying senators and targeting senators, many of whom, although they weren't with him all the way, all the time, had twisted themselves into knots, into pretzels to support him. And it wasn't enough. He still targeted them for political extinction. And so this arrogance, this bullying is finally not wearing well on the Republican caucus. It is finally causing enough members of the House and Senate in these narrow majorities to step forward to start to check Trump. So this is a way that actually democracies do self-correct. To go with the theme of optimism, if you have regular elections and you push with enough pride, with enough arrogance, you are going to start to alienate even some of your own supporters. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that the system here in this country still does work to check even the most rogue presidents.